Okay, it's been about 10 months since I brewed, so we're going to try brewing another batch. This time we're going to try brewing our clone recipe of our spotted cow. I'm going to do 5 gallons on the stove top here because it's January right now and it's a little chilly outside and tough to clean the equipment. And I'm going to be enjoying one of my Irish red ales that I made last, when I say I made that last March. So that beer's about 10 months old. And I happened to find half a case of it in the basement that I didn't realize I had. So right now we're just preparing the water for brewing. And we already cleaned up some of our equipment. And we are ready to start our brew day here at almost 12:30. Okay, we have our grains ready. What we have is a pound of caramel malt. We also have a pound of, actually 3/4 of a pound of Vienna malt and 3/4 of a pound of flaked maize, corn. And we have them all mixed together. And we have our kettle here, and I have a brew in the bag inside it. Because I have so much grain here, it was a little bit too big for my grain bag, so what I'm going to do is use the brew in a bag, and what we'll do is we'll add the grains once the temperature of the water gets up to 170, and then we're going to let that rest for about a half an hour. And at that point we'll take the grains out and we'll start our boil. Okay, so the temperature of the water got up to about 170. So I added in the grains, giving them a good stir to make sure that we don't have any dough pockets in there. You want to make sure all the grains get wet. And now we're going to let these steep. Need the lid. We're going to cover it up and we're going to let that steep now. We'll set our timer for 30 minutes. Where'd our timer go? Oh, Mom's hiding it on me. Oh, that was not good. That was 30 seconds. Oh, there we go, 30 minutes. The recipe I had last time, I steeped the grains for 20 minutes, and it came out a little bit lower on the gravity than I wanted to, so I'm going to give it an extra 10 minutes on the steep. Try to get a little more of that grain flavor in there before I start my boil. And then after we take the grains out, we'll bring it up to a boil, add in our malt extract, bring it up to a boil again, and start adding hops. Okay, so right now it's coming up on 1 o'clock. Okay, so we just steeped the grains for half an hour. Just took them out, let them kind of settle in the bowl, and I'll pour out any of the other liquid that happens to seep out of it while it's sitting there. And we're going to bring this up to a boil, and once it comes up to a boil, we'll turn off the heat and we will add in our grains. Not our grains, we'll add in our malt extract. Okay, so we brought it up to a boil, and then I just added in the 4 pounds of the malt extract. I took the pot off the heat to make sure it doesn't scorch or burn on the bottom. And now I'm stirring it while it comes to a boil again. And this is the part where you really got to keep an eye on it, because it will start to foam up and could boil over. So that's why I have my water bottle right there. I spray it down and adjust the heat. And then after the foam finally clears, that's called the hot break. After that clears, that's when I'll start adding my hops in. going to put down the camera for now because I'm going to need both hands for this. Okay, so we're up to a boil now, and we are already past the hop break, which means it's time to start adding in our hops. And for this beer we use a hop called Sterling hops. I actually used to use Saaz hops, but the Sterling has a little higher in alpha acid, and it tasted a little more like the Spotted Cow when I used it. So it's all Sterling hops. I'm going to start with a ½ ounce of Sterling for the boil, and then later on we'll be throwing in a ¼ ounce for flavor and aroma, ¼ ounce each. So I've got to get my hop bag going and get the hops in there, and then we'll start our timer for the boil. Okay, we just added in our first hop addition, the ½ ounce of Sterling. It's in the hop bag there, and we've got a nice rolling boil, and that's going to be in there for a full 45 minutes. And what we're going to do is actually, at the 35-minute mark, we're going to add in more of the hops. Okay, so we'll keep our eye on the timer. We'll actually set it for 35 minutes. And when that 35-minute timer goes off, then we got to throw in another ¼ ounce of the hops. Okay, we're about 20 minutes into our boil at this point. And the house smells amazing. I had just gone outside to empty out the grains. I threw the grains into the woods in back of the house because the animals love those. So I threw those out into the woods for them. And we're still boiling down here. And we'll be putting in our next hop addition in about 15-16 minutes. Okay, so we just added our our flavor hops here. That the other ones have been boiling for about 40 minutes, and I just threw in these. These are going to boil for 10 minutes, and then in the last minute we're going to throw in one more ¼ ounce of Sterling, our last hop addition right here. Another ¼ ounce, and that only boils for a minute. And that is the aroma hops, because you don't want to, you just want to basically activate it. You don't want to boil off the aroma. The ones that are in there right now, the aroma will boil off, and we'll be left with the flavor of the hops. The other ones that we put in earlier is where we're going to get our bitterness from. So right now we're less than 10 minutes away from the end of the boil. Okay, our boil just finished, and what we're doing over here at the sink is filling up the sink with cold water, because the next step in the process is, after about 10 minutes, I'm going to let this kind of cool over the stove a little bit, just to kind of let some of the nasties kind of boil off a little bit there, so I don't get any off flavors in. So we're going to let that boil off a little bit. I put a strainer on over there, and I'm just kind of straining out the hops, letting the water drain down in. I don't want to lose that much of that, so I'm letting that happen. And in 10 minutes we'll throw it over in the sink, try to cool it down a little bit, and then we'll add ice to the water in there and really try to cool it down. And our goal is to try to get it down to probably about 90 degrees, because I'm going to be adding cold water to this one. I did what's called a partial boil. I didn't boil all 5 gallons of the beer. I only boiled 2.5 gallons of it, which is now probably down to about 2 gallons after what boiled off. So I have about 3 gallons of cold water to add to it before we start fermentation. And we'll take a reading to find out what the gravity is, which tells us how much sugar's in the beer. So we'll let this settle for a little bit, and then we'll come back to it in about 10 minutes. Okay, so after letting the beer sit on the stove for about 10 minutes, that brought down the temperature a little bit, and then I put it in a sink full of ice water and brought the temperature down to about 140. And then once I did that, I sanitized the lid, put the lid back on. That way I let all the DMS boil off, so I don't get have a buttered popcorn taste in my beer. I don't want that, at least not for this beer. So I let that kind of boil off and put the lid on. I made sure I sanitized the lid and sanitized anything that touches the beer now has to be sanitized. And now we are just filling up the sink with ice water. And we're going to let this sit for probably about 15-20 minutes. Maybe we'll let it sit for a half hour. And we'll, because it's safe, it's in there now, so it's safe. Nothing's going to get to it. And what we'll do is then we can add it to the bucket with the cold water, pitch the yeast, and we're good to go. Okay, so the beer has been cooled down and we put it in the fermenter and added the water back in. And I took a little sample out here and I just checked the gravity on it, and the gravity's 1048, which is perfect, exactly where I want it to be. Has a nice color to it. Give it a little taste. Tastes very good. Alright, so now we got to add the yeast. And I'm using right here, it's a German Kolsch ale yeast. And I have to check the temperatures for fermentation. It should be 65 to 69, which should be perfect actually for the basement. That's right about where it stays down there. So we'll get the yeast in there and we'll get it fermenting. Okay, so right now it is the afternoon of the day after brew day. So it's been just a little under 24 hours. And you can see that when I checked it early this morning, it had just started to bubble. So right now it's fermenting. There's our airlock. Okay, the airlock is filled with sanitizer. Now what's happening inside the bucket is right now the yeast is eating all that sugar water that we made yesterday, basically, turning it into alcohol and expelling the carbon dioxide, which is what you see coming out of the airlock. And this will take place over the next couple days. We're going to leave it in here probably for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks we'll keg it. And then about another week or two after that. We might even be able to keg this next week, and we'll see how well it's fermented out. We'll do another hydrometer reading and see what we have for sugar in there, and at that point we'll keg it, and then in a couple weeks we'll have fresh beer on tap. Okay, so now this is Monday, so this is day 2 of the fermentation. As you can see, it's bubbling pretty good right now. You can even hear it. So it's probably going to bubble like this for another day or so. Then it will still start calming down. But like I said, we'll probably give it at least a week. Maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. Okay, it's been about 2 weeks. And the beer has been in the refrigerator with the CO2 tank turned up to about 11 psi, which is where I like this beer at. And it's aged in here for 2 weeks and it's conditioned, and it should be ready for tonight. So I'm going to try it right now. I'm going to put the camera down, and we'll have to, right now in the hose here is sanitizer, so we'll have to empty out the sanitizer first, and then we'll pour some beer and see how it tastes. So let's try it out. Alright, so first let's pour out the sanitizer. Get some beer on the line. And now let's pour our first spotted cow out of this keg. Still needs a little more carbon. It's supposed to look a little hazy, which it does. Get this in here so it doesn't fall out. Close up the fridge here and pick up the camera. Alright, so here we go. Let's take a look. Color looks pretty good on it. A little bit of the haziness. And now I'll give it a taste. And sorry you can't do this. I have to do this alone. I think it's very good. I think I nailed it this time. I think even Mom might like this one. So here it is, Moo Brew, and I got 5 gallons of it, so I'm glad I like it.